Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast. This is your escape for real, unscripted conversations about sports, hobbies, life, and storytelling. No scripts, no forced takes, just Man Cave talk. Now, here's your host, Dan Kasper.
I want to talk some more Brewers baseball with you because, again, this was something that you threw out a few months ago was, once we get to spring training, one of the things that you were going to be kind of curious about was whether the Brewers were going to sign Pat Murphy to an extension or if he was going to get an extension. Well, he's got an extension now, according to reports. Now, the Brewers haven't made anything official, which isn't too surprising because Mark Attanasio just said the other day we don't talk about contracts. But I thought one thing that was kind of good for it, I'm not arguing with it, but Jeff Passan said, with the deal, it makes Pat Murphy one of the highest paid managers in Major League Baseball now. And I don't know if we'll ever find out the number, but I'd be curious to know how that compares to Craig Counsell. I think Brewers fans are just kind of curious to see where that's at.
Right. And I do think it's a little funny that obviously when Counsell left, one of the reasons he left is he wanted to maybe initiate more growth in manager payment.
Yep.
And I guess in some ways he kind of did that because, guess what? Now his replacement is right up there with him. So
exactly. So, I think on one hand too, I've seen some people say, for Milwaukee to do that to make him one of the highest paid managers too, it probably also maybe indicates that we're going to continue down this plan. Like they maybe acknowledge that, hey, he has been a big reason why we are having this amount of success. Not to knock the roster or anything like that, but It's like they've over-exceeded expectations.
I think they're it seems like they kind of have taken on his identity a little bit, maybe a little bit more than with Counsell. And obviously they're two very different people and they're two very successful managers, but it just seems like, and I don't think it's a coincidence that it's a younger group that's doing that. I mean, when you have Pat Murphy, who has the background of being, primarily a college, coach for most of his career, it's a very different, skill set than, Craig Counsell, who's, basically, obviously he went to college in Notre Dame, but he spent his whole adult life in the pro game.
Right.
So it's just different. I don't know if Pat Murphy is going to be a great manager for every team.
Right.
Because I think if you get to a team that's more veteran, they may, I would say, be a little less likely to maybe listen or maybe want to tune him a little bit more because, it is a little bit more of what you see coaching younger players.
Right.
I would say the rah-rah style, but we know the style of manager and just honestly just the style of person that he is.
I mean, we just saw, his clip of his speech, right?
Right.
What he addressed the team and such. Because I could see veteran guys like, sort of thing, rolling their eyes.
But the guys that are veteran on the team are Brandon Woodruff, who's been around him, Christian Yelich, who's been around him, and maybe that temperament is a little bit more suited to that style.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I was saying a little bit earlier. I totally agree with you. He may not work with a Mets or Dodger or whatever, but he works for Milwaukee. And that's why, he easily deserves this extension and such. I mean, I don't think there's anybody who's like.
No, I think that's just kind of one of those okay, that's an easy layup. And sometimes, in life, when you get a layup, you just take the layup. Just get him extended. Yep. Make sure he is properly financially compensated, which part of the contract too I like is the fact that, essentially it's a redone contract. It's not an extension. So he's making a lot more this year than he was in his previous contract.
Right. I love that, MLB.com reached out to him, Adam McCulvey, I'm assuming it was, and his response was, I'm just glad I have a locker here again, continue to have a locker. I mean, that's, again, for what we know of him, kind of a typical response and such. So I know Mark Attanasio talked a little bit earlier in the week, did his usual media sessions. Did he say anything that kind of either made you roll your eyes or anything like that?
Not really. I mean, I think it was pretty straightforward with what what you kind of expect from him, and the expectations for the team and stuff like that. So,
I thought it was one interesting thing that he noted that Major League Baseball is asking organizations to have a succession plan. Did you see that part? Because he was asked about, when his sons maybe potentially taking control. And it was, I don't know if it was this year or last couple of years ago, he said that Major League Baseball asked all clubs to have a succession plan in place or an idea. And I thought that was kind of an interesting thing to kind of maybe ask these ball clubs for.
Right. Especially if you're an owner that's probably not in any, I don't know if that's the case with Mark, but you're not in any hurry to necessarily step away. But, I mean, maybe it's that way so that way if something happens, if there's, something unfortunate that happens, that you're not kind of scrambling at that point of, well, now what do we do? Like,
right.
The kids, if the kids weren't looking to take it over, in some example, I'm not saying this one, I'm just speaking in generality. But like if the family or the younger kids just weren't looking to take it over, it's like, well, then what? Like,
right.
You don't want to be in a spot where the team just doesn't really know what to do.
Right. Well, you bragged about it on Twitter last Friday or Saturday or whatever it was. So Brewers got your man Luis over at third base. Let me ask you this question that we threw out earlier in the week. When you look at now the depth that Green Bay, that Milwaukee has at third base, with Luis, with Hamilton, and let's throw Jet Williams in here. Compare it to what it looked like maybe a few weeks ago with Caleb Durbin, Andrew Monasterio, and Siegler. Would you say the depth is a little bit better right now, maybe from a veteran aspect, when you compare the two?
I would here's the thing. It's very possible that Luis Rengifo does not put together a better season than Caleb Durbin. But I don't think that's how the team was looking at it.
Yeah.
I think they were looking at it, well, would you rather have Caleb Durbin? And then, whatever you get out of Monasterio and Siegler, which is going to be more in kind of in a complementary role. I mean, if things go right, if those guys are getting a bunch of at-bats, something probably didn't go right.
Right.
Or would you rather have, what they got in the return for the trade plus Luis Rengifo, who is someone that's coming off a down season, but from 2022 to 2024 was, I would just say, solid. And to me, that's what this is about. It's about raising the floor.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible that, because I think it was 2 years ago he had a wrist injury, and it's possible that what we saw last year from him might happen this year. But at the very least, it's a lot more proven of an opportunity where at least you can say, okay, I can see what they're thinking there. I can see why they went in that direction, at least to start, because it's kind of like in the NFL having a bridge quarterback. This is it's someone that, you're not expecting to go in there and suddenly, hit in the middle of the lineup and hit 30 home runs and drive in 100 runs. Like that's not who he is. That's not what he's going to do. But it's someone that has manned third base, has played there a lot, and actually has played around the infield. So immediately he fits in with the Brewers because he's played a bunch of different spots. And he's somebody that, doesn't strike out a lot, that can steal some bases, that has shown some power in the past, like a switch hitter that hits lefties better than righties. But to me, it's somebody that raises the floor.
Right.
It's somebody that, unlike last year when you started the year with, the combination of Oliver Dunn and Vinny Capra, that this is someone that's actually done it in the majors before.
Mm-hmm.
Now a lot of people might not have, seen it or known it because he was playing with the Angels, and the Angels kind of right now are pretty much an irrelevant franchise outside of Mike Trout.
Right.
But it just to me, it just gives you a little sense of, okay, this is someone that's done it before. Whether he does it again is another question, but at least there's a little bit more there than last year with the way they started the year with, okay, here's these two guys that have never really played in the majors before. They've never really done it before. And then when they got their chance, they didn't really do it.
Right.
And they're not with it. And they're not with the organization anymore. So,
So to me, it almost like, okay, you make this move. It almost is like, okay, now we don't have to maybe rush Jet Williams or make a decision that we don't. It almost reminds me of the Caleb Durbin one from last year a little bit, where, okay, maybe you start him down in spring training a little, or in AAA and bring him up.
And I think that's part of it, because Jet Williams really hasn't played much third base.
And Caleb was like that too, right?
He was. He hadn't played much, and he hadn't played much at AAA either. So there is some comparison there. But also, my thinking is, let's put it this way: if Luis Rengifo comes up and he struggles for 2 months, that could be enough time to bridge to Jet Williams or Brock Wilken or Andrew Fisher if he continues to move quickly. Like, the Brewers have a lot of infielders, and we know, obviously the more prominent ones with Jesus Mate and Pena, but those other guys I mentioned, like, by the end of this year, it's very possible they're in Milwaukee. That could happen a little bit sooner if they get up to a hot start, but like, you kind of need that bridge to get there.
Right.
And to me, Rengifo was one of probably 2 free agents that were probably about as good as you were going to do for that.
Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, too, the versatility that he provides, even like if you bring up that guy, then maybe he's back to a bench utility type of player.
Yeah, he's a guy that could still play a couple times a week, make a start at second one day, make a start at shortstop if Joey Ortiz is struggling, or just to give him a start at shortstop. He can still play at third base. Like, he's played some outfield before. So, like, the succession plan of if one of those third basemen is just, knocking the door down to get to the majors, and then suddenly you move into a utility role where he's playing still a couple times a week, but you have that versatility. That's not a bad thing.
Right. Yeah. So I feel better, obviously, now about it. And I know I was reading a little bit, too, when you look at Luis and some of the advanced, I think this was from Jack Stern, mentioned, third base defensively, he's not great over there. But we're starting to hear more about now the third base coach for the Brewers. Is it Andrew Fisher?
No, he's no.
Or not Andrew Fisher. Who's the Brewers' third base coach? Now I just blanked on his name. No, come on now. It is Matt Erickson.
He's more of like, and he does like he work with the
infielders
too.
and Matt Arnold talked about Matt Erickson, and when they were looking at Luis, and Matt Erickson kind of like scouted him and such, and you kind of look at the infield play over the last couple of years. Like, I guess I'm trying to draw comparisons to the pitching. We always kind of talk about pitchers coming to Milwaukee, and Chris Hook gets his hands on them. You feel good if a pitcher kind of comes. But you look at the infielders that the Brewers have had from second, shortstop, and third, and deep. Look at how Caleb Durbin improved last year.
Yeah, and the thought was, Durbin maybe didn't have the arm for third, and he could make all the throws there. So
right,
but yeah, like maybe there's some. I know Matt Erickson's someone that's really kind of well regarded in that organization. Has kind of worked his way up. Was managing the Wisconsin Timber Rattlers not that long ago.
Yeah,
now he's an important part of the big league staff. But that's kind of how it works together, where obviously people look at the Brewers and they think, oh, they can develop pitching. It's like, well, part of that too is the fact that those pitchers are usually pitching to pretty good defenses. When you look at Joey Ortiz, who for the struggles he had offensively, I don't think anyone ever questions his defense. No. Obviously, Bryce Terang and before Ortiz, Willie Adames, and just some of these other people.
Right. Yeah. Ortiz from third to shorts, and that such too. So I've just got to, that's the first time you kind of heard Matt Erickson's name kind of being mentioned, really kind of developing these infielders and such too. So with spring training, we got our first game tomorrow.
Yeah.
When you approach spring training, what is something that maybe you kind of follow or pay attention to? Like, for me, it's going to be curious how the pitching, because everybody's like, well, how's the pitching staff going to roll out? But what's the Brewers' mindset going to be with these younger pitchers? Because sometimes I think for veterans, you're working on some new things or a new pitch and that. But then you got younger guys maybe trying to win a job in that rotation. Like, where's that balance going to be? How do you approach spring training as a Brewers fan?
Number one, I just want to see as few injuries as possible. Early on in spring training, no news is usually good news.
Yeah.
You don't have to hear, well, this guy's got a sore shoulder. This guy's having a little something in his elbow, so he's getting shut down for a week or two. Like, you just. Yeah. But otherwise, I don't know. Just it's always such a long rollout. Some guys will be out there day one.
Yeah.
Some guys it's going to take a little bit.
Yelich we may not see for another month.
We might. No. Ryan Braun was always famous for needing like 4 games.
Right.
Like he would go out there like the second week of March. He would get like a few games in. And he would just like, okay, I'm good.
Yeah.
Like some guys, it takes a while.
Yep.
But yeah, just get through there without anything significant injury wise, and then. I'm curious because I don't know how many, especially I would say on the position player side, how many spots are up for grabs. Because I'm not sure on the position player side how many it really are. Because, if you're looking for like backup spots, Gary Sanchez is the catcher.
Yep.
Like, if you're looking for the infielders, I would think that David Hamilton's probably your primary backup infielder.
Mm-hmm.
Blake Perkins is probably your backup outfielder. Like. Maybe there's room of some guy if, I don't know, like an Eddie's Leonard or someone just hits the cover off the ball in spring training. One of those guys that kind of makes the decision for you.
Right.
But, pitching, there probably is a little bit more. But with the thing we don't know right now is amongst that big group of starters, I would say outside of Woodruff, Mizorowski, and Priester, I think those 3 are probably pretty well, concrete in there. But like, if someone, say Brandon Sproat, doesn't make it out of spring training as a rotation piece, number one, does he go down to AAA and continue to kind of work on things? Or number two, is he start as a reliever?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's interesting. And plus, the Brewers now suddenly have a bunch of lefties. When you factor in like Aaron Ashby, probably on the barring something like Jared Koenig, same thing.
Robert Gasser,
but then you got Robert Gasser. You've got, the guy that
Harris.
the guy that might honestly be on the outside looking in is Rob Zastryzny, and he's done well when he's been in Milwaukee. It's just, but when you kind of look at these other guys that might be in front of him, it's the younger guys. It's a Kyle Harrison they traded for. It's whatever. Like suddenly he's a guy that gets to the end. By the time you get to the end of spring training, if he's not pitching for a spot in Milwaukee, he's pitching for a spot somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I think he probably just knows, hey, if I pitch well, I should be pitching in the majors. It may not be here, unfortunately, but it might be somewhere else because other teams are going to be noting. The Brewers may have a bevy of potential lefties, but other teams may not.
Right. You were mentioning some of the younger names and position players and such, and I'm trying not to look too far ahead, but with the numbers game and such, Jesus Mate, Brock Wilken, if he could stay healthy, he's had some bad luck injury wise, right? You mentioned Fisher, Jefferson Kiro, catcher, some of these young pitchers,
Luis
Pena. It's also kind of hard not to be excited about the future, right?
And that, that's, sometimes there can be a bit of a stigma. It's like, when don't be a prospect hugger.
Yeah.
Don't assume every prospect is going to be, because they're not going to be. But if you take a talent and a numbers approach to it, generally your higher profile ones, and certainly Mate and Pena would fall into that category. It's like, okay, but those are it's one thing if it's a bunch of guys that are, ranked in the back half of the top 100, which sometimes those guys work. Guys like Brandon Woodruff and Corbin Burns, I don't think were ever, they were like top 100, but they weren't like, this is the number 10 prospect in all the major,
Right.
And a guy like Jesus Mate has been pretty much universally a top 5, if not higher. Like seeing some people say like, by this time next year, he could be the top ranked, universally the top ranked prospect in the sport.
Mm. Is he best suited at short?
Probably. I think you'd like to keep him there.
Yeah.
I think that's where the value probably lies with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's more likely to stick there than Luis Pena, who probably might end up at second, maybe third. But,
and you got Pastor Egg over there too. So,
but it also depends on how this looks when you get there.
Yeah.
Those guys are still, I think, probably a little further away because they're still so young. Like, I know people can look at Jackson Cherry and say, well, he did. It's like, he did, but that, that's kind of the exception, not the rule.
Right.
For every Robin Yount or Jackson Churio that's playing in the majors at a young age, there's a bunch of others that are getting rushed too soon. And the Brewers are kind of at that thankful spot where they don't have to do that.
Right. Yep. I totally agree, man.
But maybe that's even kind of the other thing to kind of keep an eye on spring training is a chance to see these guys.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be playing a lot, especially the latter half of games, I'm sure.
Yep.
So, that'll probably be a thing to keep an eye on because, look, once...
Cooper Pratt won a Gold Glove in AAA last
he's
year, right?
He's a tremendous defensive second or shortstop. But, but it might be just one of those things where that's kind of what you're looking for because, they're going to be playing a lot. And look, once, if Jesus Mate ends up going to Biloxi for AA, look, many of us are going to be watching Biloxi Shuckers games, streaming online or something. So this is your chance to kind of see some of these younger guys.
Right, exactly. Oh, man, it's hard not to be excited about the future a little bit, too, and just that stability maybe coming up here for the Brewers. So